Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the Cryptoverse. Today, we're going to talk about Bitcoin, and we're going to be discussing the bull market support band. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and also check out the sale on Into the Cryptoverse Premium at intothecryptoverse.com. So, the bull market support band is really helpful for identifying major uptrends and major downtrends. In major downtrends, the Bitcoin price will basically stay below its bull market support band for most of the bear market. Interestingly, this cycle, we've had two fake outs below the bull market support band at the same time during the year. So back in Q3 of 2023, Bitcoin briefly went below the bull market support band. And in Q3 of 2024, Bitcoin briefly went below the bull market support band. Apart from those quarters, Q3 of 2023 and Q3 of 2024, right? Apart from these two quarters, Bitcoin has essentially been above its bull market support band since January of 2023, right? So almost 2 full years where Bitcoin has been above its bull market support band, with the exception of 2 quarters, Q3 of each year. And it's actually really interesting because if you go look at like the year-to-date ROI of Bitcoin in 2023 and 2024, right? You can see it was that lull in the market by August, September timeframe, which is what led Bitcoin to go below its bull market support band, right? By Q3 2023 and Q3 of 2024. You can see that other times when it was tested, it found support at the bull market support band, right? And so right now, the bull market support band ranges from around 75K to 80K, right? 75 to 80K. Now, that doesn't mean you can't go below it. Obviously, you could. And to be completely honest, I wouldn't be that surprised at some point to see Bitcoin retest that line, right? Sort of the lower high structure from the prior year. Wouldn't be that surprising if something like that eventually happened. But it is interesting how this, what we saw this Q3 of 2024 is really similar to what we saw in Q3 of 2023. And one of the ways that you can visualize, Bitcoin is by just simply looking at the extension of the price of Bitcoin above its 20-week moving average. And on here, we call it the short-term bubble risk. What's interesting is that Bitcoin has been relatively steady here in terms of any time it reaches, kind of like this level right here, where it's like 30 to 40% above the bull market support band. That's usually when it either stalls out for a while or gets a correction, right? You can see that a year ago, around this time, Bitcoin also stalled out for a few weeks, right? You see that? You can see that it going into December, this was the early December, just like over here, early December, you can see Bitcoin stalled out for a few weeks. And then by the end of January, it wicked to almost the 21-week EMA. It almost made it there to the 21-week EMA. Again, right now, the 21-week EMA is around 80K. And by the end of January, it would probably be higher, like significantly, higher than 80K. It could be 85K or something like that. But this is an important way to look at the market because what it shows you is when the market gets too extended and needs to cool off, right? So anytime this cycle, we've seen Bitcoin extend 35 to 45% or so above its 20-week moving average, it's usually due for either a correction, right? A drop in price, or a consolidation in price until the bull market support band catches up. Okay? That structure has not yet broken. Whenever the structure does break, then you could argue you get another bear market. But the reason, the reason why this is kind of interesting to look at is because, any time, so in 2023, when it got below the 20-week SMA, on really the first attempt to get back above it, it was successful. Over here, it was just 1 week and then back up. And I've always said, right, if it's just a week, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to put a lot of faith into that. But you can see that it basically came down here in August, September, and we said it was likely going to be about a 6 month lull, and 6 to 9 months, and it was about 7 to 8, right? So it made sense for it to pick up right back here. So what I think you should watch for going into the next month or two is watch for the bull market support band to slowly go up like that, kind of like what it did last year, right? Where it goes up, Bitcoin kind of consolidates again, which is what it's been doing, and potentially even wicks down to it, right? And again, that is essentially what happened last year, right? When you look at the short-term bubble risk, that's what happened. Now, if Bitcoin is not able to hold the bull market support band, obviously that would be a different story, and you'd have to start looking for other outcomes. But one of the reasons right now why Bitcoin, I think, is stalling out is because the 10-year yield continues to go up, right? If you overlay the 10-year yield with Bitcoin, the 10-year yield is really breaking out right now, and you can kind of see, like, when it broke out over here back in July 2023, you also had sort of this Bitcoin correction right there. Now you can see the 10-year yield is breaking out once again, and you're getting this pullback in the markets. And remember, Bitcoin historically does get a pullback in January of post-halving years. It doesn't necessarily have to happen this time, but if you look at 2021, you'll see Bitcoin got about a 30 to 31% correction or so in January of post-halving years in 2021, and in January of 2017, Bitcoin had about a 35% drop. So that would be standard. I mean, if it were to happen, and whether it's from this high or a slightly higher high, right? If you got a 30%, I mean, it's already gone down, 15%, right? If it did go down a little bit more, that would get you close to the bull market support band. Or if you see what happened last year happen again, where it kind of wicks higher in January and then wicks lower in late January, then you could get a 30% correction, but from a slightly higher price than the price we saw at 108K. Okay. The other thing to think about too, in terms of the bull market support band, is to look at the natural log of the price over the 20-week moving average. And I continue to bring this up, and it continues to be valid, right? This trend line here continues to act as resistance, and anytime that Bitcoin hits it, it struggles, right? It really struggles to break through. And I do expect it to break through at some point, because eventually it would imply that Bitcoin's always below the 20-week moving average whenever this thing goes below zero here, because the natural log of the price over the 20-week SMA, if the price is the same as the 20-week SMA, then you get the natural log of 1. The natural log of 1 is 0. And so if it's below 0, it implies the price is always below the 20-week moving average. So eventually this trend line does need to break, but you can see that it has not yet broken, despite all the cause for it, in fact, to break. Right? It just continues to act as resistance, showing you that diminishing volatility from one cycle to another is something to respect, because it continues to play out from one cycle to another. Right? Every time we hit the trend line, there has in fact been a drop, or at least a cool down period. The other thing to think about, and then we'll wrap it up, is if you look at USDT dominance, one of the things you'll notice with it is this is kind of what happened last year, right? Where it set a low, right? There was a low set here, and then wicked below that low in December and January, and then went back up to its own bull market support band, right? So you could argue that's what's happening, right? There was this low here by USDT dominance, and then just swept that low, and now you're seeing the market really fight with seasonality of wanting to go up, but also it's fighting the 10-year yield, which is pushing risk assets down, and so you're seeing USDT dominance slowly go up, just like it did last year around this time. And then it's probably going to check in with its own bull market support band relatively soon. Now, if USDT dominance gets rejected by the bull market support band, that would be really good for Bitcoin USD. If USDT dominance breaks through its bull market support band, that'd be really bad for Bitcoin USD. Okay? We had a very similar structure last year as well, actually, in 2019, where USDT dominance was putting in these higher lows, right? And then it eventually broke down right? It eventually broke down, but then when it got back up to the bull market support band in February 2020, I think a lot of people thought it was going to get rejected, and then USDT dominance just soared through because we had a pandemic-induced recession. So you could get something like that as well, right? I don't think people should just completely discount that scenario. We did just get the uninversion of the 3-month and 10-year yield, so naturally, I think it makes sense to be somewhat cautious about that. But this just goes to show you all the nuances in the market, right? If you want Bitcoin to go higher, watch USDT dominance and see if it gets rejected from around 4.72 to 5%. If it gets rejected there, then Bitcoin likely will put in another all-time high. If USDT dominance basically soars through the 20-week SMA like it did back over here in February of 2020, if it just soars through it like it's not even there, then you're likely looking at a larger Bitcoin pullback that could be on par with what we've seen historically in January of post-halving years, right? Normally we see larger corrections in January of post-halving years. So we'll see if that happens. But so far, this cycle has been playing out in a very similar fashion. And then there was one other thing I wanted to mention, and that was actually the stablecoin supply ratio oscillator. I know it's a mouthful, but if you look at the stablecoin supply ratio oscillator, what you'll notice is that we actually had a very similar move last year as well, where it spiked in October. Over here, it spiked in November, and then it slowly went down, and then Bitcoin consolidated, and then it got another spike after it reached about that 0.579 level. Right now, the SSRO is at 1.03. So and it's getting closer. Last year, when it hit 0.553, it was late January. So it was about a month from now before it hit that level. And then we saw the SSRO go back up, and the price of Bitcoin went up as well. So I think it's important to keep that in mind too. Obviously, there's also the other analog we've discussed, and that's the launch of the QQQ that rallied into the 2 weeks after its 1-year anniversary. That would put it basically the end of January as well. So a lot of things to consider, guys, but I did want to at least provide the update to the bull market support band for Bitcoin. Look at it in a few different ways. The natural log of the price over the 20-week SMA, the extension of the price from the 20-week SMA. Look at it in line with USDT dominance, the stablecoin supply ratio oscillator, and just kind of see like where we are and why the market isn't really moving a whole lot right now, right? USDT dominance sweep the low. The market's trying to figure out, is that a double bottom for USDT dominance, or is it just a setting up for a lower high for another leg lower on USDT dominance? So I think that's why the market is somewhat confused. And if you want to know whenever the walls could be lifted for Bitcoin, just keep an eye on the 10-year yield. As long as the 10-year yield goes up, Bitcoin's likely going to struggle. If the 10-year yield goes down, it depends on why, right? If the 10-year yield is going down because, just because, it's gone up a lot in the short term and maybe people are expecting a little bit too much growth and therefore it needs to come back down, inflation's not so bad, then Bitcoin will likely go up. But if the 10-year yield goes down because, say, the unemployment rate comes in next week and it's at like 4.4% or something, then you would likely see Bitcoin sell off because of that fear of recession, right? Whether it materializes or not is something else, but just the fear of it, just like when we got the 4.3% print half a year ago. But anyways, guys, we'll wrap it up there. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe, give the video a thumbs up, and again, check out the sale on Into the Cryptoverse Premium at intothecryptoverse.com. We got a ton of charts. We just did our weekly AMA. Make sure you guys check that out. Lock in the low rate. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.